welcome to the Covid Convos, where we have real conversations with real people about what does well-being look like in a pandemic. Today I've got the full team with me. Simon's here and Grigsy. Do you want to say hi, boys?
Hey, how are you guys?
Good to see you guys. Great to be here.
You know, we've got a very special guest with us today, somebody that I admire very much, and I know the boys do too, Dr. Peggy Kern. Peggy, would you like to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. It's really a pleasure to be joining you here tonight. So I'm Peggy Kern. I'm an associate professor at the University of Melbourne. I am American, so I'm from the United States. I've been living here about 5.5 years, really focusing around well-being, resilience, all sorts of other interesting topics, and a part of the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program. So all of the hosts have been my students, so it's a real thrill to be joining you here tonight for this conversation.
And we're very lucky to have Peggy. She's incredibly knowledgeable across a whole bunch of different topics. But I'll let her talk about that. What's it been like in your context, Peggy, at the university, as an educator living in Australia? What's been your experience so far of COVID-19?
So it's certainly, we are living in interesting times, which I think is the conversation I've had time and time again. At the university, we've changed things very rapidly. We're trying to stay on top of all of the alerts on everything. Most people are working from home at this time. We've been very rapidly trying to convert classes all online. And so from a teaching perspective, there's a lot of pressures to change how we're doing things completely. We have had a couple cases confirmed at the university, not in our department. And so things are rapidly changing. There's the trying to keep going with some research, change our entire way of teaching and thinking about how to do that well in ways that we actually still care about students. And we're managing all of our students' anxieties as well. Students are dealing with all sorts of things, whether it's trying to understand how to even connect in with classes, get to country, being forced out of the country. So there's a lot of pressures there, and that's gonna keep changing. Looks like we're gonna be heading towards full lockdown in the next few days as well. So it's a rapidly changing space, and none of us actually know what that means. But that's certainly adds challenges. But I'd like to think there are a lot of opportunities there as well, which I hope we get to explore more tonight as well.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're about, Peggy. I was just going to ask you also, so great to hear about what it's like on the inside at University of Melbourne, but I know you wear a lot of other hats as well. One you've already touched on, you're a citizen of the US living in Australia. I know you're an avid runner. What's it like? How has been your experience with those parts of your life as well, if you're able to share?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges there. When I was scheduled to go back to the States for annual leave and spend time with family, and that's not happening now. I can't go back to my country. And so there's the reality of navigating all of this with having to let go of, if something happens to my family, I can't be there. And so there's the reality of living as an expat in a society that is home, but at the same time is not entirely home. So there's those personal challenges there. So your one question was around being an American, and what was it? Sorry.
I suppose I was just interested in broadening it out. I know how else are you interacting with this situation, I suppose?
Yeah, and you mentioned
running. Are you still?
Yeah, you mentioned the running aspect. So for me, and as we think about some of the a lot of the focus through all of this is sort of on the physical aspect of we need to protect our physical health and whatnot. And I think parallel to all of this is thinking about how we actually maintain our mental health through all of this. For me, staying active is a mainstay for me. This last week, my gym closed on me. And so so there's still the outside. If we go into lockdown, who knows what that means? And so, and so there's the challenge of the ways that are the things that actually keep you going, and whether that's physical, mental, etc. I've been an athlete. I've at very competitive levels and whatnot, and so that's very much a part of my identity. And a lot of that is being stripped away, and that's the reality of the times that we're living in. And that's true for everybody, is that things that are our ways of being are being stripped away from us.
There's, two interrelated things that I hear in that story around your experience, Peggy. And the first one is to do, with this loss around family. And, you don't have to be an expat to be feeling it. So a lot of places where coronavirus is hitting, if somebody is really sick or if somebody is dying, you cannot be there with them.
Yep.
Right? And, that way of being with somebody through their last moments that we really cherish in a way has been taken away. And the second part around that same thing, losing so many parts of our identity as many of us are forced to go into lockdown and different places like that. I think, this theme of loss hasn't been explored as much as it could be.
And I think that's exactly where we're at, is that, I look at anyone who contacts the disease and they're placed in separation from everyone. Anytime that we've navigated loss of a person before, it's let's get their family around them and enjoy those last moments together. And it doesn't matter the risk that's there. And we take that away. And there's a part of humanity there. There's the parts of life that we treasure and we live most. Things like sports, things like getting together and whatnot, that there's a huge sense of loss. And I think different individuals are going to experience it in different ways. But essentially what we are facing is a collective aspect of grief. And I think when we start to think about all of this, grief actually is a huge aspect of what we're going to be going through. We often think about grief in terms of loss of loved ones, and there are many around the world that sadly enough are losing loved ones. A huge thing that's driving the fear is the fear that I will infect someone I love and be the cause of their death. And so there's that fear of loss there. And so I think as we start to think about aspects of grief as individuals and what it means for us as a collective, it actually speaks some to behaviors that people engage in, and that some of the things that we're going to be seeing as we navigate the weeks and months to come.
Peggy, speaking about fear, I know faced with a similar but different situation in Belgium here, when I heard the government was closing. I don't know how much the borders have been closed now, but I know that they're slowly flights are being reduced and a lot of borders are shutting. And there was the recommendation to come back home if you're abroad and you want to come back home. There was that fear response of, even though we're scheduled to be here until July, of let's get out of here and let's get home because it's my home, and I'm just wondering whether there was that thought process for you as well.
I think there was certainly that thought process there, and especially when I had a trip scheduled to go back home, and I canceled it. And then it turns out all international flights were canceled, so I wouldn't actually have had a choice. But it does become who am I choosing? And then there's conflict with that in terms of well, am I putting other things in front of family, and what really matters to me? And I think all of this actually makes us start to question what really matters to me. And there's so much of that. We go through life all the time trying to understand how we fit, who we are, and yet we never actually stop to understand what, or to think about, what is it I care most about, and how do I act in ways to really show that I value those and really bring those about. And perhaps something that can come from this is that it challenges us to stop. We don't like to stop, but we're being forced to stop. And perhaps we can actually stop and really think about, well, what really matters the most to me? And as we work towards the future, how can I actually set up my life in ways that I really do prioritize what matters most to me, and set up things. And I think what we're seeing in this is what matters most to people. What we're seeing is not the things that make me happy as an individual. It's the people in my life. It's the experiences of the life. It's the things that are outside of me that actually make things most meaningful, that we've taken for granted, but we're grieving now. But perhaps we can be more purposeful in really valuing and really working towards creating experiences of in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. It really speaks to me, and something that's been in the front of my mind this whole time. And I'm going to be really interested to see how it plays out. I hope that it is an opportunity for people to, well, they're going to have some time, at least in Australia and Belgium, where Griggsy is, and other places, to pause and hopefully ponder some of those things. I think it's natural during these, times of crisis, whether it be a coronavirus or a death in the family or marriage breakdown, that you start questioning those things and getting serious about what is important in life. And I think a lot of the time it's those, what I think are the simple things. It's spending time with loved ones, it's getting outdoors, it's physical activity, it's growing and learning, so those sort of things. It's not about making heaps of money and buying a holiday house and getting the latest sports car. So I really, look forward to seeing how that plays out, and how we come out the other end of this, I suppose.
And I think there's that aspect of us that those of us who are in the positive psychology space, I think that actually becomes our challenge, is that at this point, people are grabbing for anything. There's that real fear of losing everything, and all of a sudden we realize what we actually care about. And it's going to be our challenge for those of us that's in this space to say, how do we navigate people towards creating that future that they want, as opposed to getting either trying to run away from the discomfort that they're in. And we're going to see that, people running away in all sorts of ways, whether that's self-abuse, other abuse, etc. How do we actually help people sit in that space, and through that metamorphose into something that is not going to be back to what it was, but actually evolve into something that is actually better?
Yeah, there's something, we talk about what does well-being look like in a pandemic, and we're talking about grief, but this is exactly how well-being looks like in a pandemic. I have a story today, share it with all of you. Hopefully my partner won't get too mad at me. But she's doing her honors at university, and her university is taking more and more strict measures because they feel like they're going to close down soon. So her whole honors year has been pretty much ruined. This is something that she's been looking forward to for a long time, about to become a scientist, get into that world. At the same time, her sister was living with us and now has chosen to go back home to Sydney to be with family. And she can't go with her, and she's not going to be here. And she's always had a big connection to family. So, today she was meant to be doing an assignment but just couldn't work up the motivation, and then getting so frustrated at herself for not being able to do it. And what it took was an hour of us just sitting together, having a bit of a cry, having a bit of a hug, and just holding each other through that grief and letting go of some things that we've lost and recognizing there are things that we can't control. And I guess this process of holding each other through the loss and letting ourselves feel it and letting ourselves work through it is just so important right now, to take the time to do that instead of just trying to power on, because I know a lot of us are thinking about, we're juggling all the balls and we're trying to keep them going, but right now what's needed sometimes is just to stop and let that person grieve for a bit. Yeah.
And I think the element of, and I think about, if we think about all of this as sort of this idea of grief, I think it's actually quite useful. I think we're in this period of loss in many ways, and we're quick to put in like ways to, well, how do you feel better? How do you connect with others? How do you keep life going as if it's not changed? And which is actually quite common if we look at responses to grief at the individual level. So if we're saying this is happening at the collective level, is at the first stage, it's a fight response. It's either denial or it's trying to keep things normal and push away that aspect of loss. And in many ways, that's what we're doing. We're trying to keep things going is, okay, we can't meet in person, let's put it online. Let's keep going in the way that we've done because we're so afraid of what happens if this is real. And then at some point, when we hit that wall, then all of a sudden, then it becomes a very, what people are going to, there is going to be a lot of depression. There is going to be a lot of real sadness. And I think we can be very quick to say, well, let's just put, it's okay. Let's just put in this exercise so you'll feel better. Instead of actually just sitting in it and saying, it's okay. And it's not that we have a fix, but I'm here with you. And that it's okay to not be okay. We're going to sit in this discomfort together. Yeah. And that through that we'll actually move to a period of acceptance of life is different. And perhaps finding meaning and coherence from that as individual stories and as collective stories, with acknowledgement that even as we come to a new way and a new kind of understanding of things, there can be times of real sorrow of that loss that is there because it did matter so much to us. And so, I think we in the pause psych field can be very quick to say, well, here are strategies to pick yourself up. And I think at times that's helpful, especially as people are reacting in very different ways, just trying to hold on to what was. And that as we move forward, perhaps our challenge is to understand how we can actually help to let people sit and be with them, and help move them towards what can be in their own time and in their own way to a future that we actually don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, even from my experience today, there was everything in the back of my head going, you got to get this done, you got to do this, you got to do that. And kind of like my partner was in the background. And I think the most important part of that kind of moving forward for all of us is to recognize the opportunity when it's there. So, I took a step back. I realized that she wasn't coping, and I just said, that stuff can wait. And we're going to have to do a lot of that, just recognizing that stuff needs to wait. Otherwise, we're going to come out of this with so much more pain than is necessary.
Yep.
And I think part of that is being, sorry, Simon. I think part of that is also being patient, because I've been speaking to a couple of friends and family back in Australia, and the reaction tends to be when they hear on lockdown is, oh, how much longer have you got of that? And it's, oh, another 2 weeks, whoa. And I'm like, well, I'm actually preparing for a lot more than that. because it's not just going to go away tomorrow. So being patient with the idea that, hey, this is going to be a part of our lives for, we don't know, but also balancing that with the living day to day. So not getting too far ahead. That's what I'm finding the struggle. Not going, you know, to that, where are we going to be in 12 months? What's this going to mean in 2 years? But balancing those two perspectives, I guess.
And I think that's where there's that, we have to completely change our sense of time on things, even as we reach the end of our time together. You know, is that we're a very quick fix society, and everything is a very rapid time, and we expect instant results. We expect instant change. And the reality of that is our instant fixes are actually going to cause more problems than it is going to be helpful. And that we're actually going to have to learn to change our understanding of time and actually learn to appreciate time within that. And things are going to happen slower than we'd like them to do, but they're going to happen in the right time. And we part of that is we want to recreate this future that we think we can control. But we actually need to let go of the fact that we can control things and that things are certain. I love a quote that was by Michelle McQuaid, which I'll probably get wrong, but she noted that chaos settles eventually. We try to, chaos does settle. We try to rush that. We want it in our timing, but if we give it time, it will settle. It won't take us back to where we were. It'll take us to a new outcome. And I think that's that opportunity. And I think that's what we get to take advantage of. And our challenge is to not rush that, but to help people navigate that in ways that embrace the pain that is there, but don't let people sit in that pain. And think about, well, what does this pain tell us about what we love and what we care about, and how we can move that to create the future that we want, perhaps not in our timing, but in the right timing.
So yeah, perfect way to end things, Peggy. But I want to give you the opportunity now. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you really want to say at this point in time?
I think a key thing is that things are uncertain, and that's okay. We're afraid of uncertainty, but it's actually been an image of control that we've had, an image of certainty. And if we let go of that, it's going to be messy. Things aren't going to work right, which can be scary, or it can be an opportunity to let us let go of how things have to be and let us experiment. We're going to mess things up. This is the biggest disruptor we've had of life around the world. And I think the opportunity there, as challenging and frightening and terrifying as it's going to be, is to bring about a future that we don't actually know what that looks like. But if we actually focus on what we really care about and use this as an opportunity to really recognize individually and collectively what really matters, then we can move towards ways of making a future that is different, but perhaps is better.
I don't want to say anything because that was so poignant, and I don't want to ruin it. But it's been an absolute amazing pleasure to have you on the COVID Convos, Peggy. And that small thing, I think, can help guide us moving forward. If we just, through this, hold ourselves through the pain, use it to focus on what really matters, we have the opportunity here to create a more positive future coming out of this. And I think that's exactly what we need right now to help navigate. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to join you guys. Love what you're doing and look forward to what's to come.
Thanks,
We-
Peggy.
Thanks,
we're
Peggy.
also, we're also trying this thing now where we're requesting people to share, like, and subscribe. If you like us, if you don't, you can tell us. But other than that, we'll sign off and say, you stay healthy, world.